you have mentioned the National Construction Code. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that the energy efficiency rating has now changed to meet 7-star minimum, which is excellent. How does this roll out in South Australia? Is this and what timeframes? Is anyone able to give us that information?
I can probably go some way to answering that question. There's a bit of a grey area around that at the moment, and whilst it's been adopted, so whilst the responsibility sits with the federal government to come up with those changes, each state ratifies those changes independently. Most states around Australia have said that they will adopt both the improvements in livability standards, which are a major improvement in the National Construction Code that was produced this year. Some states have said they would do that, and the energy efficiency increase from 6-star to 7-star. South Australia is not one of them, unfortunately, yet. They haven't confirmed that they're going to do that yet. The last thing I read a couple of days ago. So it's a bit of a watch this space on that one. But I think there's a lot of movement shifting towards doing that anyway. People are ramping up to do it. As you've seen, the tools are available to understand it, to understand whole of home. And you can just go and ask that anyway, because you understand what it translates to.
Nobody's stopping you from doing it now.
No, that's right. And the other thing I would say about that on the back end of that is that there has been for some time, financial incentives to go for minimum 7-star. Now some banks, because of that increase in the rating, shifted on a national level. Some banks are saying, well, even going to a minimum 7.5-star, you'll be given in financial incentives with lower interest rates and things like that. So still in inspiration.
Just on a quick one to just piggyback off of that also is that it perhaps we as a collective want a bit more like to adopt that as soon as possible, like as soon as started, but holler at some of our government representation and the planning commission. If anyone wants to.
Yeah, and there's currently an expert panel looking at changes in the Planning Commission, and one of the things they've said is they've got a series of things they're talking about, and they've got questions about like tree policy and a range of other things, but then they've also said, what else should we be looking at? So that might be one that you can put in. On that topic of discussing with elected members or expressing to your ministers what might be useful is, I know probably some of you are thinking, yeah, those things are going to save me in the long run, but I still need to pay for those things, early in. So the championing of incentives to do some of these energy efficiency measures might be a useful thing. I don't know if I should be saying that, but yeah. I know some councils do offer energy efficiency measures standards and for incentives, and local, federal, state governments have been doing that as well for battery and solar. And we have a question over here in the back, or a comment. You need to use the microphone. And does anyone else have a question? All right, great. So we've got a few people to go to after Mel.
I've got it. Links like a sieve. And all happened on branch train 500 to Denver. I want to best insulate that. What's the technique? Is anyone health and practical solution that? Because it's my biggest challenge.
I'll leave the insulation question answer to these guys. But one thing you can think about is rather than trying to be more economical with your energy use by insulating, you could also consider being flexible. So there are heaters out there, proving the problem slightly here. There are heaters out there called storage heaters or heat bank heaters, they're often known as. They're tightly insulated cases that you can charge during the daytime with cheap solar, and it'll become incredibly hot, 1,000 degrees hot, and then they will gradually release a nice background temperature throughout the day. If you can't go to the house, you can always do it for heaters.
I think the next session there's a talk about
Yes, it's on renovation.
Hello. A lot of the conventional builders are talking about massive issues with supply chains and massive delays, and in particular the rising costs. Things, basic materials going up 10, 20, 30%. Just curious around those same pressures being experienced by sustainable builders.
It's the biggest trick at the moment, and it is something I've never seen anything like it before. In the last 9-10 months, we're looking at 15 to 20% increases across the board. That's the reality of it, and that's using builders that have great relationships with in the past on open book transparency. That's what it's coming back as now. Some of that will be justified in terms of actual material shortages and supply chain issues. Like everybody's just jumping on the bandwagon as well now, and it's just supply and demand at the moment. Good sort of litmus test in all of this is, for instance, brickies. They will be charging that first to go up and first to come down. Roughly 12 months ago, $1.10 a brick to lay. We're paying $2.40 now to lay a brick, so it's just astronomical, and it really does impact things enormously, particularly when you try to take responsibility for budget over a project, and you do preliminary estimates and estimate of costs at design stage, and that's accurate. And then 8 months later, when you come to actually start the build, it's 20% more. They're not very nice meetings to be running. Yeah, it's really, really, really tricky at the moment. A lot of people will say, if I just wait, will it come down? Never see material costs come down. It may fluctuate a little bit, but I think it's going to remain busy for a very, very long time.
All right, Lockie.
Yeah, I might just add to that briefly, because whilst we were talking, I thought also something that I've experienced is that it's about demand. There is so much demand at the moment. It's a global issue. We're on the end of the global supply chain that's affecting everyone. We know where it's all at, inflation, all that sort of stuff's all adding up. So your question was asking whether or not specifically builders who are focused on producing eco outcomes are experiencing that. Everyone's experiencing it equally. The demand for those builders is probably experiencing it a little bit more because people are focusing on it. One thing you can do is to work with designers like us who will give you a roadmap to creating a sustainable home and making sure that if you, as I said earlier in my speech about working towards an idea of as-built verification, and you're going to make sure you carry through that quality control, you're probably open to a broader market of builders who can build for you if you've got a really well-detailed roadmap.
All right, we have another question.
Going back to the earlier thing about the 7 stars, I mean, that's been delayed and delayed and delayed by very heavy campaigns by certain members, elements of the building industry. And one of the strongest arguments, particularly with the current governments, is that there's a housing shortage and that the bottom end of the market just can't afford the market. Have you got any comments of how we can address that part of providing good quality rental homes which don't cost thousands of dollars rather than year to head, through to those who are buying their own homes?
Since I've still got the mark, I'll answer quickly and then pass it on. My thing is, all this stuff is, everything becomes cheaper and more economical by a process of quantity and numbers. And double glazing was once considered to be expensive. Now it's the standard thing. Now doing 7 stars, you won't be able to avoid doing double glazing. So just do it. The sooner we do it, get on with it, everybody will be in the same boat, the price will come down. It's tricky to have that conversation in the environment that we're in, but otherwise it's pretty simple, I think.
Short term, hard to answer. Long term, building at this point, we wouldn't be in that situation. If we were achieving the economies of scale like now, because we made the decision decades ago. And also, it'd be easier to save up a deposit to buy a house if you weren't spending so much on maintaining.
It's a great point, actually. And so, full disclosure, I'm here representing that it's sustainable building, but the reality is that I also work in, I've been a consultant and now I'm with quite a large Australia being named. So just to address that really quick, is look, at the bottom part of the market, it's going to be actually quite difficult to move anything because that's what laggards do. They just don't. Now, it's going to move regardless, mainly because the bigger conglomerates that do massive development, which actually turns into a lot of rentals and actually first home buyers, things of that nature, they're all pushing this up spec now. And the reason why they kind of have to do that, and the pressure behind that, is because some of these very large developers are publicly listed and they have shareholders. And they have quite literally, not quite literally, but there's something called corporate social responsibility. And there's a lot of organizations that understand that if their corporate social responsibility, CSR, or their ESG, environmental sustainability, governance, those outcomes are not actually trending green or better. They will lose all that investment. So, again, like I'm just putting this out there that they're going to change. They will go with this. They want to do all electric. They want to go with low carbon, zero carbon, net zero carbon. And that will pull the market some bit because they have a lot of trades and a lot of other kind of skills to upskill on that side. But the other reality is that longer you wait on this as a business in building, you will become defunct. Yeah, in some decades. So if you're okay with that, if you're okay with another 20-year run, cool, do your thing. You will really be left behind. And sorry, you did not hit it on your business, which is the whole point of businesses. So that's what I'm going to have to contribute to that.
All right. I think we have time for one more question. This lady here.
Thanks. I'm not sure if this is a dumb question, but you mentioned using 70% rainwater, things along those lines a few times. Where is the allowance for that? Because I get the impression with a lot of people I talk to is that we're not actually allowed to use it as drinking water and stuff within certain areas.
I think it's fair to say that rainwater is something that just needs to be discussed between, you can basically choose however you want to approach that. If you want to, it's in terms of the 70% thing, just quickly, if you want to look after 80% of your water usage in a house, you'll need about 40,000 litres, 20 to 40,000 litres, depending on the size of the house and your usage. To go 100%, you need 120,000 litres. So economically, it just doesn't make size-wise, it just makes sense to do that. So that's our sort of 70% rule of thumb. But in terms of the water going into the house and what it gets plumbed to, we range from some people want to just flush rainwater down the toilet and drink mains water. Some people want to flush mains water down the toilet and drink rainwater. But it's whatever you want to do. We generally do whole of house, so rainwater to whole of house. You don't have to filter, but you can. And there's all sorts of different filters that can be used. So there's no right or wrong answer, I don't think, with that. It's just something that needs to sort of work through. Yeah.
Can I do just a quick shout?
Yeah, of course.
One of the things to do with water, please go see Melissa Bradley's The Water Sensitive Essay. And then also Allison is a certified planner as well. She might be able to sense.
Yeah, and also a plug for that corner of the room. They have a guide for new homes for landscaping. So this helps you meet the new planning requirements of having to have a certain number of trees on your property and a whole range of ideas of how to actually do that safely and, to suit your needs and your aesthetic, but also if you're, building part of a strata and those type of things, it also shows you good examples for that.
And water.
And reduce water usage. And there's also going to be one coming out for WSID, water sensitive urban design as well, and how to incorporate that into properties. All right, that might wrap it up. I'm going to ask you to go in 10 seconds, top tip for new builds, and it's going to be a yes and. So you don't need, just assume that what the person said before you was also excellent.
I'm going to steal from Mark, just do it.
You'll face pressure to connect to gas. If you don't need to, just refuse it.
It always surprises me what people will choose to invest in during the process. But I think investing, of course I'm going to say this, but investing in design, in the actual plans for a building, if you're going to spend that amount of money on something, design it properly. With them.
Orientation.
All myself, I think I said earlier about that. Yeah, you can come and talk to staff afterwards. Obviously, we've both got stalls here. I think you've got a stall here. No, you're running away. I'll be here. So no, one thing I think is a very hard set of principles to work out. What is the highest principle of working with? But I would say look at materiality in terms of what materials do in terms of consuming energy in the first place, which is embodied energy. So we know that metal is highly consuming of embodied energy. And also, if you put metal inside of your home, it's a heat sink. So as Mark was saying earlier, 140 mil deep timber frames, lovely, in extra insulation on your walls. On the other hand, people are looking and saying, oh, well, let's use a metal. Why can't I use a metal starter? Well, I can tell you, they get very hot very quickly and they transfer heat. So materiality and thermal bridging, I think, is incredibly important.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Just do it, guys. Just do it.